Okay, howdy everybody. I'm Trey Hudson with the Oxford Paranormal Society. I'm glad to be back here at the Anniston-Calhoun County Public Library. This is going to be a little bit different. I'm used to giving this presentation before a live studio audience, with canned-in laughter and clapping and applause and all of that. But obviously, I'm pretty much here by myself, except for my intrepid technical staff. So we'll make it. The good news is you're socially distanced from me, so I don't have to put a mask on the camera or put a mask on myself. And y'all can actually hopefully hear what I have to say. Got a little bit, some things that are a little bit different in store for you today. Some things that are different from some of the presentations that I've given before. I've got some really, really cool and exciting news at the end of the presentation. So that's a little bit of a hook for none of y'all to turn off your feed and go get a sandwich or something. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and jump into this. I'm looking at my technical staff. People can query questions at any time, so if you have a question or not, just come back on Facebook Live and they will relay it to me, and I'll do my best to answer questions. So anyway, without any further ado, we'll go ahead and then jump into this. Got a little video here to start off. We went to the end of the slideshow. Excuse me. Technology is grand, isn't it? So, sorry about that, folks. Let me get back to the beginning. Okay. Who are we? We were founded in 2006, so we've been at the ghost hunting and investigating business for quite a while. And people ask a lot of times, where do our members come from? Well, we're just all kinds of normal people. We have very varied backgrounds from law enforcement, intelligence operations, emergency medicine, and many, many others. We're based here in Calhoun County. We have over 100 plus investigations in multiple states. But in short, we're your friends and neighbors. We're not lurking around in cemeteries wearing plastic fangs with capes or anything like that. We're pretty much normal folks, ordinary folks with an extraordinary interest in an extraordinary hobby. We're going to talk a little bit about the types of haunts. People hear the term haunts. What exactly is that? And I'm looking primarily at, ghost type stuff. The first type is poltergeist, and you've read about poltergeist in history, and you've probably heard about poltergeist. That's usually a manifestation of emotional energy that manifests itself in telekinetic abilities. Usually this will be around a child going through puberty. We see this a lot with female children at about the age of 14, that their adolescent angst and anxieties manifest themselves in telekinetic abilities. What does that mean? That means you might see things fall off of tables, dishes fall off, things fly around. It's not dead Uncle Fred. It's a telekinetic manifestation of a living human being. Now the next thing we see, which is probably some of the most rare, are intelligent entities. These are what people call spirits or ghosts. These are things that you can actually interact with. They can answer questions. They can move things. They can turn flashlights in and off. They demonstrate some sort of sentience. They have some sort of intelligence, and they're able to do two-way actions with you. Usually they can respond reasonably. We'll see this kind of stuff when we do electronic voice phenomena, instrumental transcommunications, and things like that. The third type is really cool, which isn't really an entity, but is something called a residual haunt or a residual energy. Usually what you'll do is you will find this at places where there's been some sort of high emotional energy because of an event or an individual. A prime example of this is the Gettysburg battlefield. People for years and years have talked about seeing spectral soldiers marching across the field, hearing, faraway cannon shot that they thought was a reenactment group, but that no reenactment was going on. And this is when the emotion of an event or the emotion of an individual gets imprinted on a geographical location, or sometimes, believe it or not, imprinted on a physical object like a photograph or a statue or something. These are not intelligent. You can't do two-way communications. It's almost as though it's a photograph. It's like if I held up a photograph of myself, that's an image of me. That image is not, it's not live. You can't communicate with it. It's just an image. Residual haunts are nothing more than an emotional image of an event or a person. A lot of times you'll hear about, mysterious lady in white that'll, walk through a wall that won't interact with you. That's a residual. That's just a replay of something in this person's life that's almost like being stuck on a tape loop. So those are the three kind of haunts that we usually see: poltergeist, intelligent entities, and residual. Unfortunately, this business calls for a lot of equipment. For better or worse, in order to capture some of these phenomena, we have to have equipment to do so. And I'm going to start up on the upper left and go clockwise and discuss some of the items that we have. First is a delightful little piece of equipment called a FLIR unit. Basically, it's a thermal camera. It shows heat signatures. The neat thing about that is nobody can sneak up on you if you have a FLIR. So nobody's going to try to hoax you. You can see through dark. You can see through smoke. You can see through sparse vegetation, things like that. Remember this, because I'm going to talk about a case we had not too long ago where a FLIR unit captured some amazing footage, and I'll bring that up when we get to it. FLIR units also can show cold spots. A lot of times you hear about spirits manifesting themselves in the temperature of a building or an area dropping. This will show up on the FLIR. Sometimes the cold spot will take on a form. So a FLIR is really a neat piece of equipment. It's a little on the high side as far as price, but it yields a lot of results. The next thing is just a simple camcorder. If you can get a camcorder that has night vision capability, you can use an infrared illuminator that will allow you to film in the dark. That's really, really handy. You might not necessarily be filming an entity or a ghost, but you can film your crew or your team and their reactions to the environment around them. The third thing is something that's really handy, and most people can afford this. It's a simple digital tape recorder. And I say tape recorder, doesn't technically have tape, but an individual digital recorder. That is an excellent piece of equipment for not only recording your field notes as you're going through your investigation, but also recording EVP, or electronic voice phenomena, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. The next thing is a camera. That's an old style digital camera. The cool thing is we have these wonderful things now called smartphones. Smartphones oftentimes have a digital voice recorder on them and also have a camera. So you've got two pieces of ghost hunting equipment right there in your pocket that you probably didn't even know about. The next item in the lower left is a DVR with remote cameras. We have a DVR set up and monitor. We have cameras that we can set up several hundred feet away from the monitoring station that are infrared. You can see the camera there next to it on the right. They can see in total darkness. If you have an area where a person has mentioned things moving or has had a lot of paranormal activity, you can place these cameras in that area and hopefully they'll pick up some sort of activity. And the next thing is a EMF field tester. Electromagnetic fields sometimes show when a ghost or a spirit or an entity is manifesting. You'll see a fluctuation in electromagnetic fields. You have to be really careful with that because, believe it or not, we have electromagnetic fields all around us. Whatever you're watching on right now, you're probably getting it wireless, which means that your wireless device, be it a laptop, a smartphone, or whatever, or tablet, is receiving electromagnetic energy. So it's all around us. And sometimes you'll have a problem with electromagnetic fields in the house. So you have to be kind of careful and use a little bit of discernment when you're using a EMF detector. But these are some pretty basic pieces of equipment that we have, and we have other pieces of equipment that aren't shown here, like ghost boxes and stuff like that we use. I talked about digital voice recording, EVPs, electronic voice phenomena. Very, very cool phenomena, very old phenomena. It was discovered many years ago by a man by the name of Roldive. He was recording bird sounds in a cemetery, and when he played these sounds back on an old reel-to-reel magnetic tape recorder and tape player, he noticed that there were mysterious voices in the background. that he could not account for. There was nobody in the cemetery. When he was there, there was nobody adjacent to him. It was just he by himself. So he started doing more experimentation on this, and it was discovered that a lot of times when you ask a question to an empty room or an area, you don't hear a voice come back with your ears, but when you play it back through an electronic medium like magnetic tape or digital audio, you can hear a voice. A lot of really cool stuff has been found with EVP, and we've had a lot of success with it. Now, if you have headphones, I suggest you put them on now. Not so you will block yourself out from my delightful voice. No, certainly not. We're going to play some EVPs. EVPs are oftentimes very, very faint and very hard to hear. So if you have headphones on or earbuds, this would be a good time to use them so maybe you can hear this. And I'm going to try to do this and not double tap the audio files. Like I said, I'm a little bit new with this. If I do, I'm going to go ahead and indulge and ask for your forgiveness. So let's go ahead and give this a try. The first EVP we have is one of our investigators is asking for something and says that it's really hot in here. A cold spot would be nice, meaning that if you can drop the temperature in here, that would really be cool. And we hear a very faint voice respond, cold spot. So let me see if I can get this to play here.
Very hot in here. Cold spot might be nice.
If you heard it very faintly, you heard a low voice say cold spot. During that same investigation, we can hear the words get out. You can hear a whispery, breathless voice say get out. We also had a voice tell us to get off or go away.
Here's one audio right here. Okay, let's go ahead and sit in here and do some EVP.
Very faint. We hear a very faint get off. The next one was a case that we did not too long ago in LaGrange, Georgia. The background behind this case, which is kind of cool, is there was a ghost or an apparition of a little girl that the client's granddaughter would interact with. Unbeknownst to us, there were the deaths of two little girls within about 100 yards. They had two deaths of females, young females, with their neighbors, years apart. While I was interviewing the client, we only discovered it after playback of the video, and you can get EVPs on video too, is you can hear a little child kind of jabbering in the background, and she says, "Bye, buddy." I didn't find out until later that one of the children that died in an adjacent homes, their brother was named Buddy. So this is really kind of a neat EVP. So I'm going to go ahead and play that for you now.
One of the owners of this home died here in the house.
Yes, he died. He come out of our room and had a massive heart attack and died.
And hopefully you heard the little child's voice in the background that said, "Bye, buddy." It sounded almost as though there was a child in the area where I was interviewing the client. There were no children around. There were no children anywhere around. So those are some really neat examples of EVP that we've captured over the years. And of course, these four are not inclusive. We have many, many, many more.
One of the owners of this home.
The next thing is instrumental transcommunication. That's a little bit different. That's where we use equipment to actually engage in two-way communication. A very famous example of instrumental transcommunication was a device called the Spiricom that used radio waves inside of a sending and receiving antennas inside of a Faraday cage, where some scientists actually were able to enter into two-way communications with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Mueller from the other side. Dr. Mueller was an engineer and actually gave them instructions on how to improve their device, the Spiricom device. If you're interested in it, just Google Spiricom, S-P-I-R-I-C-O-M, and there's all kinds of audio tapes of the communications with Dr. Mueller. It's really quite interesting. And we use several types of instrumental transcommunication devices to do this. The first few that I have are actually using a voice synthesizer that has 72 distinct sounds. called allophones. Allophones are the sounds that the human vocal system can make. 72 distinct sounds make up all vocal language. This program randomizes these sounds, and the entity, using some kind of crazy theories involving quantum entanglement and things like that, it's believed that they can influence the way these sounds come back and can respond to you. So I'm going to go through those first using this allophone system. And the first thing is I'm asking the entity, can you hear me? Am I communicating with you? And this is what I got.
Is there anybody here with us tonight? I can hear you.
The randomized sounds came up with "I can hear you." That was the response. The next one is, as I was closing out this session, I said, is there anything that you want to leave us with? And we had quite a few interactions with this entity. And what it responds with is, I can leave with the sound of their beautiful sounding voice.
Our beautiful sounding voice.
That's what the entity wanted me to leave with, our beautiful sounding voice. The next thing we use is a traditional ghost box. Some of you all might have seen the ghost box on television shows and things like that. It is a device designed to receive radio signals in the public radio spectrum, be it FM or AM, typical RF energy. And the system will frequency hop. It hops around various frequencies, and you pick up little snippets of words. And once again, the theory is, using quantum entanglement and other stuff, that the entity can influence where these frequencies stop, where these sounds stop, and you're looking for any kind of intelligible response. So this is one where I hear a scream, and then it says, "Yes, dear."
Did I just hear you scream? Yes, dear. Yes, dear.
I ask it, did I hear you scream? And then I get a scream as a response, and it says, "Yes, dear." Next one, I ask, how many spirits are in this, or how many people are in this room? And that's usually a good way to determine if you're getting any kind of intelligence response. Ask something common like, can you give us the name of somebody in this room? Or how many people are in here?
How many people are here in this room? Six?
And I got the response 6, and there were 6 people in the room. The next thing is, we were investigating a local business here in Anniston, and since it's changed hands, I'm not going to tell you which business it is to protect the privacy of the current owners. But we had a young man doing a school research project with us. His name was Andrew. And I asked, can you name somebody that's here? And I get the response, Andrew, or Andy. And I said, does anybody call you Andy? And he says, yes, my grandparents. And then right after that, it has the term generations, referring to the grandparents' generation.
Can you say Andrew? Say Andrew. He said Andrew. Did you hear that? Did anybody call you Andy?
Sometimes it's parents.
Okay, did you just hear that when you said grandparents? It said generations? Did you hear that?
So right after he mentioned his grandparents, you hear the term generations, meaning that multiple generations. The next 3 is a new ghost box that we designed that uses a couple of filters in the output, and it uses a program called the Portal Plus program, which is a bunch of randomized words from males and females, so it's yielded some pretty good results. These 3 here at the end were also in the LaGrange house that we just talked about with the small child.
Are you here with us right now? Hello?
voice respond, hello. Then in the next one, I'm asking, do you understand what I'm saying? I want a particular entity to come forward, which was the spirit of the little girl, and I'm making sure that we have that understanding. And in the course of asking if that was understood, I get, of course.
I need you to step back and let the little girl come forward. This is not a request, this is a direction. Do you understand?
And you heard a very faint voice say, of course. I'm asking, what can I call the little girl? What name can I use? And I get the response of Grace.
Is there something I can call you? Did you say Grace?
So you see, instrumental transcommunication using different methods can yield some pretty exciting and remarkable results.
Are you here with us?
The next thing we're going to talk about is disembodied sounds. These are sounds that seem to have no source. Disembodied, don't necessarily think it means a sound of a person. It can be sounds from anything, but they don't have any kind of tangible source that you can locate. Sometimes we see this on residuals. People talk about phantom footsteps, or they hear a song or a noise. Sometimes you'll hear about people talking about hearing a piano playing in the distance. These are disembodied sounds. A lot of times these are residual, not actually part of an intelligent haunt. Two examples I'm going to have here are running footsteps. We were in the same Anniston business that I talked about earlier. The owners of this business had talked about hearing two things. The first thing being the sound of children running up in the attic. Second thing is they would hear a sing-song type sound. We recorded during our investigation of this facility of disembodied footsteps, the exact footsteps that they were talking about. Sounds like somebody running across the attic above them. And we heard whistling, a sing-song kind of whistling. So let's give those a listen.
I know, I do too. Some people gonna think you're a big chicken. Scared. You better show them different.
And you can hear the footsteps very faint above us. The next thing is the sing-song whistling, or the sing-song sounds that we were able to record. Now, unlike EVPs, the electronic voice phenomenon, we actually heard these while we were there.
Come on, I know you've done stuff before.
Now, unfortunately, that's very faint. Sometimes this stuff is hard to pick up, but hopefully you were able to hear the very faint whistling sound. Next thing are photographs. Sometimes we have entities appear to us in photographs. On the spirit on the photograph on the left, if you notice right above the corner of the counter, you'll see the face of a small child in the window pane. This was sent to us by an anonymous source, so we really don't know the background of this photograph, but it's intriguing nonetheless. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a face in the corner of that photograph. So hopefully y'all are able to see this on your devices at home. Right there. This was an investigation we did in Savannah, Georgia in 2008, several years ago. A very famous location in Savannah, Georgia is called the Pirate House. It's been there since the 1700s. If you've ever read the book Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, the first scene in the book, or one of the first scenes, takes place in a pub. It was actually the Pirate House that he based that scene on in Savannah, Georgia. So what I want you to do is imagine that building in the 1700s, what it may look like. And imagine what an 18th century colonial barmaid, how she might appear. Now picture her as being 25 or 30 years old, a little overweight, leaning with her left arm on the upper windowsill, looking down at us as we were in that photograph. So she would be peering down at us as we're standing there in the front. Right there. I know you can't make it out, so we're going to enlarge it a little bit. Imagine her wearing a white kerchief or cap on her head. You can see her eyes and left cheekbone, a V-necked outer dress or apron, and her left arm leaning on the windowsill. So what about video evidence? Sometimes we are lucky enough to capture video. So let's take a look at a few of those. This is a private residence that we did in, I believe it was Wellington. So I'm going to play this for you. And I want you to watch the cord that's hanging down in front of the cabinet there in the bathroom. So we tried to recreate that and tried to figure out what was the cause of the cord moving, and we were never able to replicate that. So that's a pretty good example of catching something moving on its own and capturing it on video. How does a case come together? Well, you know, a lot of people that haven't been doing this for a while, they just think you grab your stuff and you go to a haunted location. Well, first thing you do is you have initial contact. Something I cannot stress enough to anybody listening out there is the initial contact is either by you to the property owner or by the property owner to you. Do not just go somewhere. That's called trespassing. It's stupid, it's illegal, and it puts a bad rep on all of us that are legitimate paranormal investigators. I have heard of groups just going to places, going in there and start filming and investigating. They are breaking the law and they are trespassing. So don't do that. It could get you in trouble. It could also damage a larger paranormal community. So initial contact is key. Ask permission. Even better than that, get written permission. One of the things that we have when we first make contact with a client is we have a piece of paper, a document that they sign giving us explicit permission to be on their property. We have had the police called on us. We were able to produce this document with the property owner's signature on it, and everything is cleared up. Imagine if you didn't have that document, how the rest of your evening may go. Might not go too well. So a little bit of soapbox there, but please get permission first. Second is research, a lot of research. Don't go into a situation blind. You want to maximize your time and minimize your impact on the client. So that means a lot of research on the property, a lot of research on the event, and a lot of research on the clients themselves. You want to try to, like I said, maximize your efforts and get the most return on your investment. Find out when they're experiencing any kind of anomalous phenomena, where they're experiencing it. Is there anybody around when it happens? So you can try to capture this. This is kind of like fishing. You put your hook in the water. There's no guarantee that you're going to catch a fish. You know there are fish in that pond. You've seen fish in that pond. Other people have told you there's fish in that pond. But unless you know when the fish are biting, where they're biting, and what kind of bait to use, your odds are somewhat slim of catching a fish. Then comes the investigation, the actual going out there and doing the investigation. It is not as exciting as it is on TV. It's a lot of just sitting around and waiting for something to happen. Sometimes things happen and you don't know about it until you do your data review. You review your audio, you review your video. You start catching your EVPs then during data review. So you might have 4 or 5 hours of data to try to scrub through before you actually get any kind of tangible evidence. And the next thing is the final product. That's when you actually have the final product of your investigation. So what does an investigation look like? Well, I'm going to use the case of Corpsewood or Corpsewood Manor. Sometimes the truth actually is stranger than fiction. Dr. Charles Lee Scudder was born in 1926 in Wisconsin. He was a professor at Loyola University in Chicago. His specialty was pharmacology. He was divorced with 4 adult sons. He was a little bit later in his life, and he lived with his housekeeper and friend Joseph D. Odom in a dilapidated mansion there in Chicago. The year is 1975. Joseph Odom, his friend, was born in 1938 in Illinois. He stopped going to school in the 5th grade, and he'd been in trouble with the law at some point. I was never able to determine exactly what happened, but he had some ups and downs in his life. Scudder hired Mr. Odom as a housekeeper in 1959. Scudder, in describing Odom, said, quote, "He'd learned far more about the world than I had with all of my degrees, and somewhere along the line he developed a talent for whipping up meals fit for a king." And it was rumored that Scudder and Odom were lovers. Now remember, this is back in the 70s. That was a very, if y'all that were alive back in the 70s, that just isn't something that was talked about or really looked at like it is now. It was kind of taboo back then. In 1975, Dr. Scudder had inherited a modest monthly sum of $100 a month. That was a lot more than it is today, I can tell you. And he'd become disillusioned with the, quote, rat race and office politics of being a professor at Loyola University. Basically, he was just tired and had had enough of it, and he just wanted to go away. Any increase of salary that he was getting by his professorship at Loyola was being eaten up by inflation, and he wanted a simpler life. He discussed with Joe, and they decided that a change of pace was in order. They researched remote properties with mild winters and ended up buying some land in Chattooga County, Georgia, which is just over the line. And they had a well dug. In 1976, at the age of 50, Dr. Scudder resigned from his position at the university, bought a Jeep, a camper, and ejected out of the Chicago rat race. He was headed for a simpler life with his friend Joe. The property they bought was near Treon, Georgia, up in the extreme northwest part of the state. They started construction of something they called Corpsewood Manor, named after a dead horse they found on the crude road leading to the building site. And you can see the road leading down to the building site there on the left. Within 2 years, the men had carved an off-grid homestead with basic amenities while remaining in total isolation. They were expending less than $200 a month, which was easily covered by Scudder's inheritance and retirement interest and other meager income. This experience was so exhilarating that Scudder wrote an article about the experience in the 1981 March-April edition of Mother Earth News. Now, if y'all want to write this down, 1981 March-April edition of Mother Earth News. And there is a copy of the article that he wrote. And it's called, "This is the True Tale of a Disillusioned City Dweller Who Opted for a Castle in the Woods." And he and Joe built this home themselves, which was really kind of cool. That's a picture of it. It was built out of brick. They laid the brick themselves. It had a porch on the top of it, had a couple of large rooms downstairs and some bedrooms upstairs. And some more photographs of it. To the right, you see a structure they call the chicken coop. The chicken coop will play a very important role later on in this story. It was 3 stories. It had a large room up at the top of it that was used for social gatherings. Some photographs of the inside of it. You can see the archway with the staircase leading up to the rooms upstairs, and they had a well house and another adjacent facility and circular cupola kind of structures there on the upper right. That's what Corpsewood looks like today. Very much a sad state from what it was. You can see the 2 cupola-like structures down on the bottom, and in the upper right-hand corner you see what remains of the house. And some more pictures of Corpsewood as it is today. Unfortunately, there was a dark side, as there is to most good news stories and happy stories. There's, oftentimes a simmering undercurrent. It was rumored that Scudder and Odom were devil worshippers, and I put that in quotes. Scudder was reportedly an inactive member of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. Supposedly, LaVey himself visited Corpsewood. The manor house contained many occult books, artifacts, and Scudder's own artwork and stained glass windows reflecting this belief. It's worth noting that the Church of Satan is really more based on hedonism and self-pleasure than the actual worship of Lucifer. They're basically more of anarchist and hedonist. Their motto is "Do what thou will." And Scudder liked to shock people. He had kind of a flair for the dramatic. And so he took this hedonistic mindset and took it quite far, in the sense of designing very strange, to a lot of people's sensibilities, stained glass windows. He had one with a skull with strange serpent-like things emanating from it. He had the goat head of Baphomet in a stained glass window, and he had a sculpture of a skeleton of an infant inlaid into the wall there at Corpsewood. So they were a little bit of an oddity here in rural northwest Georgia. But believe it or not, they actually got along pretty well with the townspeople and their neighbors. They just wanted to be left alone. There was also an infamous desk that Scudder had a skull on, and the devil's head board above Scudder's bed. If you can see in the right-hand picture in the upper right, underneath the archway, you can see a small effigy of what looks like a demon with horns. So, you know, people would kind of get freaked out when they saw this, and this just added into the whole devil-worshipping, rumors about Scudder and Odom. Homosexuality. Scudder and Odom admitted to being gay. This was a taboo subject in the late 70s, and this could have been some of the office politics and rumors that Dr. Scudder that he was leaving behind at Loyola University, which is a Roman Catholic Jesuit school. You can imagine that a homosexual would not have a very good time in the late 70s at a Roman Jesuit school. So that might have been one of the reasons that he decided to leave and go live a simpler life. The three-story chicken coop that we showed earlier contained a pink room up at the top where sexual orgies were conducted according to several sources. Several witnesses after the events at Corpsewood said that there were sexual liaisons there in the chicken house. Numerous homosexual books, fetish items, and pornography was also discovered at Corpsewood. Like I said, nevertheless, both men were well liked and generally respected in the community. Death comes to Corpsewood. In 1982, December 12th, Scudder and Odom were murdered by Kenneth Braddock, who was 17 at the time. He knew the men from hunting on their 40-acre estate and had sex with Scudder before, so Brock and Scudder had a liaison at least once. Brock met with a Tony West, 30, almost twice his age, to plan on robbing Scudder and Odom of the cash and gold that was rumored to be hidden up at the manor. Like I said, Scudder and Odom were more or less enigmatic figures in this community, and so rumors started to fly around, and one of them was that they had gold, and cash hidden up at this castle they built, and that's how they were funding their lifestyle, when in fact it was nothing more exotic than a simple retirement and a modest inheritance by Dr. Scudder. On that fateful day, Brock and West picked up Jody Wells, West's cousin and West's girlfriend, Teresa Hutchins. They were unaware of the robbery plan. They all went to the house. Scudder led them to the pink room to ingest drugs, while Odom cleaned up after supper. If you remember, Dr. Scudder's specialty was pharmacology, so the man knew his drugs. So apparently he knew them very well, and people would avail themselves of his expertise from time to time in the pink room. West and Brock jumped Scudder and tortured him to reveal the hiding place of the money. But like I said before, there was no cash or gold kept at the house. Upon witnessing this, Welch and Hutchins, the two girlfriends, tried to flee in West's car, which wouldn't start. They returned to the chicken house and saw Brock holding a knife to the bound and gagged Scudder. Brock then went into the main house and shot Odom and the two dogs with a .22 rifle he had brought to use for this robbery. Scudder was then forced into the house, and forced to witness Odom's body while West and Brock demanded money. So he's looking over the body of his dead friend while he's being beaten and threatened, and asked where the money is. There is no money. When they realized that there was none to be had, he shot Scudder 6 times. Scudder's last words were, "I ask for this." Strangely, as an act of almost foreshadowing, Scudder had painted a self-portrait showing himself dying while gagged, bound, and shot in the head. And this is a picture that Scudder painted of himself, bound, with a gag over his mouth and 6 bullet holes in his forehead. West and Brock sold Scudder's CJ5 Jeep and fled out of state. 2 days after the robbery and murder, a neighbor of Odom and Scudder's dropped by to inform them of the death of a local mutual friend. And he discovered this horrific scene. So Odom and Scudder's friend had discovered their bodies and notified the police. On the same day, Teresa Hutchins told her story to the police. Now a nationwide manhunt was initiated for these 2 murderers. These are the 2 upstairs rooms where the murders took place. Weston Brock killed a U.S. naval officer at a Mississippi rest stop and stole his car. The men were now fugitives. They were anxious, they were desperate, and they were going on a murdering spree. They were captured later in December after they parted ways. They were convicted and are still serving time today. It was such a crazy, fantastic, and horrible story that it made national news. Witnesses detail victims' hospitality prior to slayings at Corpsewood. And it also resulted in the writing of a book. Man sentenced to die for murders of reputed devil worshippers. What happened in the manor? Grand jury to consider case of 2 men accused of killing. To Salt, an ex-professor's killing. Here on the left-hand side, on the top, you can see the skull that rested on Dr. Scudder's desk. On the right, you see a book, which unfortunately is out of print, called Murder at Corpsewood, the saga of Chattooga County's devil worshipper slayings. Dr. Scudder's ashes were interred in the Wisconsin family plot by his sister Janet Arnold in 1983. In January of the same year, Odom's ashes were spread around the remains of the house at Corpsewood Manor. So physically, Mr. Odom's is still there at Corpsewood. The Taylor Ridge, where Corpsewood is located, has always had a reputation for strange happenings. There were tales of UFOs, Bigfoot-like creatures, and other high strangeness in that area before Scudder and Odom were ever stepped foot on that cursed ridge. Today, there are reports of ghostly gunshots, shadows, disembodied music from the long-forgotten harp Scudder kept there, and strange red eyes, believing to belong to the spirits of the Mastiff dogs that were killed that night. People who took items from the house and bricks and things like that supposedly fall on bad luck as though they're cursed. In 2015, members of the Oxford Paranormal Society and met with the Enigma Research Group out of Atlanta for a joint investigation. Since we primarily do ghost-type investigations, we took the investigative lead. This is what Corpsewood looked like that night.
Here. Yeah, that would be not a good thing.
As you can tell, it's certainly a shell of its former self. The night was uneventful for most of the evening. There was no weird feeling or any creepiness that we could detect. It felt just still and quiet until we started using instrumental transcommunications. We feel that the results were remarkable when you consider that we were literally in the middle of a forest and received direct responses to our questions and were corrected on at least one occasion by someone from the other side. We believe that the odds of these ITC responses being coincidences is statistically astronomical. I'm not going to tell you what you believe about what you're getting ready to hear or what it actually signifies. That decision is yours. I asked the question, are you interfering with the radio, meaning the ghost box we're using? And I get a response of yes. Are you interfering with the radio? I asked, what is the name of this place? And I received the reply, Scudder. What's the name of this place? I ask, is this Dr. Scudder? And I get the response, yes, Scudder. Get my mouse to work here. Is this Dr. Scudder? Are you Dr. Scudder? I say, Dr. Scudder, are you with us? And I get the reply, Scudder is. Dr. Scudder, are you with us? I get the word out. I ask, you wanted us out? I asked, what is your name? And I received the reply, Joe.
What is your name?
I ask, are you still here? And I get the response of Shirley.
Are you still here?
And I mistakenly say Dr. Odom, and I'm corrected and reminded that it's actually Dr. Scudder that has the PhD and not Mr. Odom.
Dr. Odom, are you still here?
And at 22, 28 hours, we get a K2 hit. We get a spike in the middle of the forest. We have the, whatever this is, starting to name people that are actually with us.
How many entities are here?
Erin was one of the people with us. That was her name. One of our investigators is a gentleman by the name of Tim Gillardin, which is a kind of an unusual name that you don't hear very often. We hear the name Gillardin twice. Gillardin. Then I say, can you say Gillardin? And I get the response, possible.
Can you say Gillardin again?
Possible. I ask, are you at peace?
Are you at peace?
No. I said, can you move on? And I said, there is nothing for you here. And then I get the response, the other. And I'm assuming that means either one of the gentlemen can't move on because of their affection for the one they left behind.
Move on. There's nothing for you here.
And I say, you need to move on.
I know it hurts, but you need to move on.
And I get the response, no. So it's actually a very sad story. There was sadness there during their life. It was sadness there during their death. And by all appearances, the sadness still remains. Okay, but what about mysterious lights and portals and Bigfoot and UFOs and strange forest creatures and missing people? What about all that stuff? What I've discovered over the years of doing this is we have to be very careful about putting ourselves in a box. If we say that we're only going to investigate quote-unquote hauntings and ghosts, then we're missing a whole bunch of stuff that may be going on around us. So what we did is we decided to expand our worldview and our investigative queries into a lot of other things. Because is that strange light that you see in the woods, is it a ghost? Is it a UFO? Or is it something else? And the answer to those questions is we really don't know what it is. So we created a division of the Oxford Paranormal Society called the Anomalous Studies and Observation Group. It grew out of our members' experience that defied explanation were of such a magnitude that the regular procedures used in paranormal, UFO, and cryptid research were found to be woefully insufficient. We have been exploring areas of high strangeness outside the realm of the usual haunted house. What had happened is we started to see requests for cases drop, for homes, residences, and businesses. So the normal ghost hunting stuff pretty much seemed to be diminishing. So we decided to start looking at other things. And this required a new approach which brought experts from many fields to tackle the mental and physical challenges these type of investigations sometimes involve. We reached out to former special operations people, search and rescue experts, physicists, and others. This new approach requires a high degree of discretion and hardness. Oftentimes we would go into challenging and remote areas and spend several days there. ASOG is a division of the Oxford Paranormal Society, which is dedicated to looking at events of high strangeness, recording them using the available technology, and trying in earnest to interpret the data gathered. What we try to do is take the best practices out of UFO research, ghost research, Bigfoot research, and bring these best practices into a cohesive set of standards and see if we can apply these to areas of high strangeness. We have developed a rigid set of protocols to investigate, which stress safety and capture of empirical information. We actually have a operating procedure that we go to. Since 2015, ASOG has been investigating an area very, very much like Utah's legendary Skinwalker Ranch. All I will say is this area is located somewhere in the south. It's located south of the legendary Mason-Dixon line. During the course of our multi-year investigation, which is still ongoing, at times we've experienced UFOs, strange entities, missing time, extreme disorientation, two-way communications with entities, cryptid-type creatures, portals, and other events. This is the first time that I've actually made this video public. What you're getting ready to see is some of our team members approaching an area that we had indications on FLIR that was developing into a portal. You will see our team members approach this area and disappear. You notice the date on the timestamp. It's in February, okay? There is no vegetation to screen or block the view of our investigators. These researchers are being tracked through a FLIR unit, which measures body heat. When they approach this anomaly, all body heat is dissipated, almost as though they stepped into another realm or transferred into another dimension.
Okay, look at mine. I see a little dot of the heat right here.
I saw that earlier, I thought.
But
Okay, guys, what are we getting ready to do right here? What you're seeing on the lower left-hand
Now,
side
where
is the
did you-
team
is that where you
as
had
we
it?
actually move into this anomaly.
No, the box was
These two
right
videos are
directly
synced up.
in that little opening at the front,
right here.
right between the two wood lines. It was right dead.
Just for the record, how did he see it? Okay, guys, I think we're getting ready to experience something pretty cool. So let's go. I'll film it.
That long. There it is again.
Are you seeing it on mine?
Do you see the cross?
Oh wait, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
You
not
see that
fully formed.
hazy thing
It's-
right there? That is that's
it's
the
not
anomaly that
fully
we're looking
formed,
at.
But it was.
No, nothing yet.
It was over here. If you go back over
I
this
just
way,
handed Tim the
come on
K2
back
meter.
over. It was right here, but it was a prominent box with that little X beside it.
Hmm.
See, here it is. It's forming. It looks like it's forming again. See the square box? And see the X beside it, or the cross? See the cross? See the cross forming? And see the box? But over here, before it was over here.
Stand by, we're observing what we think is another square.
Oh, there they are.
We see you. Another box is forming, but it's into the wood line now. You see it?
Yeah, I'm moving.
All right, continue heading toward the entrance of the meadow and keep the wood line to your right. Just stay right on the edge of the wood line. Go back to your black and white, I think.
Okay, that's white
It
hot.
is way bigger than 20 foot. Halt. Head to the wood line. And I see it fading away. Halt. You are right on the edge, but it is fading away. Ten-4. You are right on the right hand. If the way we're facing it, you are at the right hand edge of that box, and it's possibly 20 foot to the other edge. And there's a looks like a cross or an X And then it's probably, judging by now, it's at least 25 foot tall.
Okay, let's go.
You're recording this, right?
Right.
Did they just disappear? No.
No.
No, I'm looking at their thermal signature there. You were directly on it, but it has faded almost away. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely faded away now. It's gone.
Well, is one of them right up under it? Or what was it?
Here soon and coming up, you'll see Kristen, the FLIR unit. We've completely disappeared here. There is no thermal signature for us at all. As you see in the lower left-hand side, we're not experiencing anything out of the ordinary at all.
They are into the wood line now. Because I
Should be picking them up.
And Kristen will
Cause I
pan
can't
to the
see
right,
them.
and we'll notice another, some sort of heat signature
It would have
or
been
entity
off to the
that
right.
has moved up
Okay.
to their
About
right
50
flank.
feet.
We had all team members accounted for, and none of our team members were anywhere in that vicinity. So I'll show you that when that comes up.
No, to the right. In the same line, just walk to the right. No.
It'd be
My
the-
right, your left. Negative. It was out in the meadow itself.
Behind you. Okay, what I suggest we do is go and stand on the edge
Okay,
of the wood line.
is that them? No.
They're coming back.
And now we're reappearing.
10-4. Kind of scan to the right.
Oh, right there.
We don't know. What is that?
Kristen actually asked, who or what is that?
Alright, there they are. Look at,
What is their team 4? Grumpy's team 4, correct? No. 3. Team 3, what is your location?
And we're getting the location of all of our team members.
Okay.
Guys, I got more than $500,000, so. And nobody cares about me, so. Hey, I tell you what, let's gunfight for it.
so that's probably them.
Okay, we got a visual on your headlamps. You are approaching, fast approaching the area of the box.
Our headlamps are not on.
Well, I have them looking dead at a solid.
So that's basically some of the things that we experienced there in this mysterious place we're calling the Meadow. A book is in the process of being published detailing our investigations, and talks are also underway with a production company for a possible TV or film presentation. I was in discussions with the publisher as recently as today, and we hope to be able to release this book pretty soon. It basically breaks down our investigation from 2006 to as recently as July, when we were out there last. So hopefully when it comes out, the Anniston Public Library will have some sort of meet the author event, and I would be happy to meet y'all at that time. But in short, do y'all have any questions? If you have questions, I believe that y'all can actually query the Facebook Live app, and I will do my best to answer them.
in the book, would it tell everything that you've experienced and seen?
Absolutely. The book is completely transparent as far as the events. One thing I will not do is I will not disclose the location of this area. Reason for that isn't because I'm being mean, and trying to aggravate people, but I want to try to keep the area as inviolate and as pristine as possible. The problem is a lot of times in these strange areas or locations of high strangeness is if the location gets out, people will just start flocking to it, and they will really thwart and contaminate any other further investigation. So I won't tell the exact location, but you basically will get a right seat ride of our investigations all the way from 2016 up to what we experienced in as recently as July, just a few months ago. That's a great question. Thanks for asking. Oh, and for those that didn't hear, the question was, will I relay all of the experiences in the book? And the answer was, of course, yes. And when it comes out, you'll be able to get it on Amazon, both in not hard copy, but trade paperback and ebook.
Have you done any exploring on Area 51?
Have I done any exploring on Area 51? Area 51 is a restricted military installation, and I talk about not going into areas without permission. We can't, obviously we can't go to Area 51. Here's my belief on Area 51. There is a Department of Defense agency called DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and they are the guys and gals that are responsible for developing the next cutting edge of defense technology. There is all kinds of really cool and spooky and weird technology that they're developing that isn't necessarily paranormal or extraterrestrial. It's just extremely advanced. The Secretary of the Army today just released clarification and acknowledgement of a hypersonic glide body or hypersonic missile that can hit within 6 inches of accuracy anywhere in the world. So DARPA is developing that technology years and years and years ago. And so what I think Area 51 is a test bed for them to do special projects and stuff like that. Now, as far as anything being extraterrestrial there, I don't know. I can tell you from experience, if the government wants to keep a secret, they can keep a secret for a very, very long time. Thanks for the question.
The pics and diagrams in your book.
Are there going to be pictures and diagrams? Absolutely. Absolutely. But unfortunately, one of the downsides to it is I talked about the fishing thing. Remember, you got to be at the right place at the right time with your pole in the water with the right kind of bait. Sometimes when the really weird stuff happens, we were not there with the equipment to record it. However, I do have some photographs in there. I have a photograph of a large hulking figure at the edge of the wood line at the meadow. And like I said, this is called the Meadow Project. So the area of high strangeness we call the meadow. I have some photographs of some of our equipment being messed with, especially in a backpack during one of our adventures. I have maps, diagrams, and all. So when you read the book and you read the affidavits and transcripts, you can actually look at the diagrams and get a feel for where we are when this stuff happens. And it really gives a sense for the just how strange this place is, because we were very tight and very specific on knowing the locations of our teams. We have radio communications so we don't accidentally stumble into each other's area and have mistaken identity. So yeah, I put as many photographs and diagrams. The publisher was kind enough to allow me that. One of the cool things, and this just happened a few months ago, is there was an area where we've had extreme disorientation, radiation spikes. We carry Geiger counters with us. And in July, as we were surveying this area, we found a sapling, a tree, on a small island in a creek, 12 feet up, the sapling had been bent over into a perfect oval and fastened at the top. I don't know how somebody would do that, and not damage it. So I have a photograph of that in the book. Let me back up. I've got to put those photographs in the book. I've got to get with the publisher. So that's one of the really neat things that we found.
Are you doing any other projects at the moment or new places that no one else?
Right now, we have been spending most of our time investigating this area. It's just one of those really strange things that when we can get the team together, we can get our schedules to coincide. The question was, are we working on anything else? That's pretty much taking up most of our time because we'll go out there and spend a few days. We'll investigate 2 or 3 nights, and we'll use different investigative techniques. We'll do, sky watching. We'll do stakeouts, listening posts, things like that. So we're pretty much tied up right now with the Meadow Project. Thank you for asking. Looks like that's it. So pending no more questions, I wish y'all all a very good evening. Thank you for spending this afternoon with me. And I hope to talk to y'all soon. Take care.